Hello, welcome back to Animal Horizon, your source for the most interesting news and discussions on what's going on in the world of animals. This week, we're joined by activist and influencer Jamie Logan, and of course, our co-host Lauren Santon. What's going on, guys?
Boom.
Yo,
Boom.
yo, thanks for having me.
Great. Are you guys ready to get into some rather controversial discussion? Because as we are kicking off with actually something quite controversial to start with, is today's headline story, which, as it says in the title, why don't vegans protest halal? Something that I get a lot in my comments. I've seen it a lot in other people's comments. So why doesn't PETA protest halal? Why don't vegans protest halal? So we're going to get into it, as animal activist Joey Carbstrong recently sparked this debate back up again when he released footage that was secretly filmed inside a halal slaughterhouse in the UK, which is some truly absolutely horrific footage. I don't know if you guys have already seen this and seen what's been going on. But Joey put secret cameras inside a slaughterhouse that found workers cutting up animals while they were conscious, beating them, putting the screams of wolves over the speakers to scare them as they were being killed. And all this was happening inside this UK halal slaughterhouse. And yeah, obviously, most of that was illegal. And this has been in the mainstream news over in the UK. You can head over to Joey's YouTube channel if you want to see what he found. There is both a non-graphic and a graphic version of the investigation. And it's been on the news, mainstream news. It's been on, I think it was BBC, ITV, Telegraph covered it. And yeah, it's caused a lot of stir. And one thing that's been happening as well, this is what we're going to get into now, is a lot of people have tried to make this about religion and actually focus in on halal itself, right? And including some kind of right-leaning, center-right people have spoken about halal and how they oppose it. But Joey has actually, snapped back here and said, don't make this about halal, don't make this about religion, it's about animals, it's about slaughter. He's trying to stay consistent, inclusive, and focused on ending all slaughter, which I think is commendable. But this is what we're going to discuss now. Why don't vegans protest halal slaughter specifically? Because if the law says non-stun slaughter is cruelty, which in a lot of the West has been the case, that the Western people and Western politics have decided that stunning an animal is necessary for their welfare, right, before slaughter. And obviously we don't agree with that either, but that's not nothing, right? Before that, it was a free-for-all. So when you introduce an animal welfare law, that should mean something. But we are allowing exemptions to that basic bare minimum law. So shouldn't we be outraged as animal advocates that the most basic animal welfare laws are being bypassed for cultural reasons?
So can I duck in there?
Yeah, go for it. Let's talk about it.
So what I was going to say was, is there's a difference between whether, something is wrong and should be opposed, and then, how we actually go about doing that in reality. And I feel like with this one, to focus specifically on halal would maybe be a mistake, when I think we should be focusing more on religious exemptions generally, which does include halal, but I believe it also involves like kosher as well, right?
It's halal and kosher. Yeah, the reason we're focusing on halal is because Joey's investigation was in halal slaughterhouse, and that's the one that's in the spotlight. But yeah, I'm referring to both. Yeah, when I say cultural reasons, being bypassed for cultural reasons, I'm referring to both halal and kosher. It would also refer to, there's how many millions of Chinese people are there in the UK now? If something happened where some groups started to say, we want to be able to do this to dogs because it's in our culture, we'd put our feet down and say, absolutely not, as a community. But we're not doing that for kosher or halal slaughter.
I totally get that. I'm not saying what I'm saying to try and be, overly sensitive to one specific group. What I'm trying to say is, I think it would maybe hold us back. Again, this is speculative, but it would maybe hold us back if we focus on halal, just because people then may overly associate the issue with being halal specifically, when actually what we're trying to do is basically close loopholes, right? There's a religious loophole, and religion shouldn't be used as a justification for harming others, right? And so if it is being used, then we should focus on, basically, my preference would be just this general, stop using religion as a reason to harm others, basically, rather than specifically focus on halal. Because even though halal maybe, I don't know the details, but it may be one of the more brutal ways, and maybe that's why people focus on it as much, or it's more neglected. But I feel like focusing on halal, while there might be merits of that, it might come at the cost of people overly focusing on that, like they do overly focus on fur, right, rather than leather, if you get what I mean.
Let me put this to... Yeah, I was going to say, I'll put it to you, Jamie. I was going to like, okay, go ahead. You just go.
I think that when we focus on halal, we are focusing on the idea that there is a quote unquote proper way to kill. And us as vegans, we are trying to, as you said, Lawrence, close any loopholes in assuming that there's any right way to kill an animal. Now, the people that are practicing halal, I think, are good-hearted people that they think they are doing the right thing. They are trying to convince themselves that this is the best possible way to do a horrible thing. And so we are trying to deprogram, and we are trying to rewrite the narrative that there's any acceptable way to do these things. Because at the end of the day, if we place our dogs or an animal we love, or even ourselves, in the position of any of those animals that were inside those slaughterhouses that you were just talking about in those videos, we wouldn't be okay with it. So I think that by focusing on slaughter as a whole, we are just saying that, okay, you know what? Let's not do any of this.
Sure, I understand where you're coming from. I think the kind of point that I'm trying to drive home a little, though, is that obviously there are things that we should have some level of focus on as some kind of priority. And just bear with me on this, right? Come with me on this. I'll ask both of you here, right? Now, we understand that, yes, I agree with both of you. We want an end to slaughter. We want animals to not be bred into captivity and killed, whether it's halal or whatever. We don't care. We want it all to end. But if the best that we've got so far along that road is that the government says, do you know what? We hear you. We're going to try and make it nicer for the animals, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put in stunning methods. And now that is a necessity. And you cannot do it without stunning now. You have to stun them. Okay, that might not be progress in the eyes of the animals, and I'm sure it isn't, but in the eyes of advocates, that is significantly better than what was there before, which is, like I said, a free-for-all, which is just kill animals however you want. Well, so putting in restrictions is not animal liberation. It's not the end of their suffering. However, it shows you that, okay, well, there's some effort being made in their own way to make this to make them suffer less, or to put in restrictions. Then if they're going to undermine those restrictions, doesn't that significantly go against our progress as a movement, that we don't call them out on that immediately and say, hey, no, whoa, hold up. You went forward a millimeter and you were immediately taking that millimeter back and allowing certain groups to just bypass it. Is that not something we should have a focus on as advocates?
Yeah, I agree. I think that poses like a low-hanging fruit, right? And then another low-hanging fruit was something that we mentioned, I think, in the first episode when we were talking about, Wayne was saying about how the enforcement of already existing regulations is just not done. The amount of checks that are done, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, if there's stuff like that or stuff like this with religious exemptions, I see that sort of stuff as low-hanging fruit. Obviously, if we get a win there, it's not going to bring us to the end goal of animal liberation, obviously, like you said. But the only point I was making is, I feel like here the issue is religious exemption rather than specifically halal. I feel like using halal, it goes too narrow so that you will get people associating the issue with that one type of practice rather than the general issue of religious.
So you're saying you agree that it should be a focus, but it obviously shouldn't just be a focus on Muslims. It should be a focus on religious exemptions. So including kosher, including any group that wants to undermine the animal welfare laws of your country. We should contest that as advocates.
We should be firm, and we should say, look, in this country, we're officially, well, you know, it depends on the country you're in, because you might not be an officially secular country, but you would say, our laws here are secular. You know, we say this is the way that you should treat an animal. Again, obviously, we would say you should go further and not do it. But this is on the books. We've got, this is how you should treat an animal. your religion is not a good justification to bypass that. Sorry, you know, you can.
But I think there's confusion here with people where they actually believe that is more humane, that it's a quick and painless death. So unless we can like make it clear to those people that stunning is the better technically way of doing things and that it causes less suffering, I'm not sure
that's so important, because if your country has a law in place that the majority is happy with, it doesn't really, you don't have to convince anyone of anything. You just make it illegal. You say, no, I mean, if the only meat you will eat is meat that has been killed in a way that is not in line with from an animal that has not been killed in a way that is not in line with our animal welfare laws, then tough, you'll have to eat something else. You know, I think we need to defend our absolute pathetic animal welfare laws that are in place need to be defended if we hope to ever build upon them, even though we don't agree with them and they are weak, right? And they're not really enforced. Well, we need to demand that they're enforced and demand there are no exceptions. And we need to defend them strongly and not allow these exceptions, even if somebody they really believe it's better. It doesn't matter if you believe it's better. These animal welfare laws are in place. They're scientific. They're not religious-based laws. They're scientific laws. Yours is based on religion, all right? And religion one overrides the other, you know?
Right, and religion is used to do a lot of bad things. So I do think that it is a matter of saying that these religious exemptions should not be allowed or be acceptable, especially when it comes at the cost of so many animals suffering because of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think this is, you know, some people would call both of you and myself brave for saying this, because I think there is a lot of fear of being called, Islamophobe or an anti-Semite or whatever it may be for saying this. But I think this is I think for a lot of people, this is common sense, but they don't dare to speak up about it. And I think that's a real issue within animal advocacy. And you can see this actually when we go back to the story with Joey, how it's playing out now politically, because with this story here, with this specific slaughterhouse that Joey's exposed and all the horrible things they were doing, it looks like the government is going to do nothing about it. It looks like they're claiming, as far as I can see, the Food Standards Agency, that they're gonna do nothing because the footage is over 90 days old, is their excuse.
Oh, whoa.
Right?
That's crazy.
The slaughterhouse says they fired a few people, they've made some changes, no arrests, no license revoked, no consequences, nothing is being done. And I think a huge part of that is what we were just discussing, in how people are, I think in the UK, and I think a lot of the West, people are afraid to actually speak up and say, we don't like this aspect of what this religious group is doing, like whether it be Muslims, whether it be Jews, when it comes to animals. People are terrified. Well, people are terrified of criticizing anything, you know, that from any group that's deemed to be some kind of, you know, minority group, or that's deemed to be like needing soft kid gloves. You know, they treat them really softly. And I think that's playing into it here. I think that's one of the reasons that they're trying to get away with not doing anything about it, because they don't want the, you know, they don't want to be accused of Islamophobia. They don't want to be accused of anything that's going to make them look bad. And I think advocates have that, and government has that as well.
Yeah, and it's just like we would, and this is actually related to something that's going to come up in one of my stories, but it's like we don't apply the same standards here, and this is obvious to all of us, than we do in other contexts, right? So say you had in some business, right? Let's say Hollywood, take the Hollywood or the BBC as an example, right? These are cases where there has been what seems like almost systemic harm of minors, right? I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. We would not say, oh, evidence has come out, but it's more than 90 days old. You know, they've fired the people now, so whatever.
They've made internal changes, Lawrence.
Yeah, but the thing is that we wouldn't just demand firing. We would demand to show that you've put adequate systems in place to make it not happen again, right? That's what you demand, and it wouldn't matter on whether it's 90 days old or not. You know, just firing someone is not an adequate thing to do. It may be a necessary thing to do, but you have to go further to show that you've put things in place to prevent future, you know, wrong-uns or whatever, however we say it, get through the system.
God forbid we suggested, hey, put some cameras up inside your slaughterhouse and put a live stream so that we can see what's going on, since you guys like to claim that everything is running smooth and everything is back to normal. But instead, when you have people that go in undercover and place cameras, then they'll say, oh, the footage isn't good enough because it's 90 days old. Oh, you didn't actually film it for long enough, so you can't use that as evidence. Or, oh, the camera's too shaky. It's like we have to go through all these hurdles. But truly, if they want to act like something great and humane is happening in there, play it. Let us see.
Yeah, now we have seen it. I mean, Joey's footage showed what they will not show, and it's absolutely horrific. And you know, one of the
now with their new management, I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Let him go back. Let Joey go back in there. Put some cameras in there. Yeah, absolutely. That's obviously not going to happen. They're going to probably ramp up security now, so they'll never get caught ever again. You know, I've seen some people come back in this and say, well, the reason that we don't want to focus on religious exemptions like halal or kosher is actually because it's such a small part of the problem, right? So I just want to quickly address that because I found out some numbers today that I think you guys might find interesting. So Muslims, we'll speak about the UK. Muslims account for about just nearly 7% of the UK population, but they're responsible for 30% of the sales of lamb meat in the UK, right? So 30% of the lambs killed in the UK are killed in the halal way. Now, not all of halal is non-stunned. There is some of it that is stunned, but 30% of sheep are not stunned before slaughter in the UK, which is about 6 million sheep a year are killed that way. And when it comes to other animals like chickens and cows, it is a minority that are not stunned, but it's still millions because of how many, because of the size of the industry. And, that market, the halal market, they're expecting it to go up to $2 billion dollar market, I think it was, or it might be pounds, by 2028. So, it is a massive, massive issue. And to me, by the way, I mean, me personally, even if it were one animal a year that were killed in that way for a religious exemption, the numbers don't really matter to me. It's the fact that we're allowing undermining of the most bare minimum standard pathetic animal welfare law that's barely intact by itself. We're allowing, oh no, do you know what, throw it out of the window. If somebody has a special religious request, let's just let them kill an animal how they wish. I think that's a disgrace, even if it were one animal. But no, as it happens, it's millions actually in the UK. That's just UK, by the way. In other countries, it's also happening. So, yeah, I think to close out this topic, I guess, unless you guys want to add something more to it.
I just wanted to reiterate what you just said about it doesn't matter how small the problem is. It's the fact that the problem still exists and the fact that it actually is in the millions. And so to let anybody get away with it, I mean, it's not the fact that they're Muslim, it's not the fact that they're Jewish. That to me has nothing to do with it. It's the action towards the animal. And at the end of the day, these are the real victims, not the people that are now claiming you're hating on me for my religion. It's like, it doesn't have anything to do for who you are.
No, of course,
if you were Catholic and you were doing the same thing, I would say that is not okay to do to animals. Regardless.
Yeah, 100%. If any group came to the UK, lived in the UK for a long time, or wherever, USA, it doesn't matter whether they just got there, whether they're multiple generations there, but if they decide that, okay, my culture and the way I do things requires me to undermine and get a special exemption for your animal welfare laws to either, kill animals or hurt them or whatever, it's cruel. This is animal cruelty, and we know it's all animal cruelty, whether it's stun or non-stun, right? But in the eyes of the British public and the eyes of a lot of countries, the Western public and the governments, animal cruelty for them is defined as killing an animal without stunning them. That's like a bare minimum thing they've come up with, and that's what they, supposed to enforce. So the point is, if cruelty is wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter who's doing it. Like you said, it could be anyone from any culture. Religion shouldn't get a loophole for that, and they shouldn't be able to ignore the law in the name of tradition. And we need. I'll reiterate it one more time. We need to, as advocates, I think we need to have a better defense of the bare minimum laws that are in place, and we need to be confident in saying, hey, no. These exemptions I don't think we should be just casting it out to say, well, it's all wrong. I think we should say, no, hold up. If you put in like one bare minimum restriction, we should defend that restriction as well as saying it's all wrong, but we need to defend that specific restriction as well. Like,
right.
come on,
And David, one more thing. It's like these people like to pick and choose. I'm no expert in religious studies, but from as far as I'm aware, it's not mandatory in any religious scripture that we do these things to animals. So they want to like pick and choose to fit and suit their own narrative, and it is very frustrating.
No, for sure, for sure. Someone in the comments just mentioned something before we move on. It's quite interesting. Danielle is saying that even if the meat came from halal killing, if it's not handled according to their rules, it's not halal, and some Muslims wouldn't eat it. So why ask for it? Now, this is interesting, and this is something that actually Joey has gone into himself. For those who don't know, the activist we're talking about who did the investigation, Joey Carbstrong, he actually discussed this and has mentioned that because of the way that most animals come from a factory farm, right? Most animals come from big barns, factory farming, full of disease, where they're killing each other and eating each other even, and attacking each other because they go insane because of how many of them are jammed in these bloody places, and all the horrible pulling their teeth out, chopping their tails off, all this horrible stuff they do to them. All of that is haram, all of it, by the way, because halal, it's got to be the specific rules that you're not allowed to harm them, they shouldn't be distressed, and so the slaughter is the final part of all of this. And okay, we want to do the slaughter the halal way, but everything up until that point is completely haram. So technically, in the UK and probably in the USA as well, 99% of animal products that a Muslim or a Jew would be eating is actually not kosher and not halal. And because
who's regulating it? The industry themselves is regulating it. And Joey's the first person that's been able to document inside of that place. But should we just let the industry continue to regulate themselves and put labels on it? Because I've been to halal slaughterhouses myself, and I've seen them take downed animals that are sick, that have tumors, that would be considered haram, and in the way that they show up, and take them inside and butcher them. So
of course.
They're regulating themselves.
Money talks more than religion. Yeah.
Right.
When it comes down to it, right? When it comes down to it. Absolutely. So what can people do? I suppose give you a call to action. If you're in the UK, there is a petition to ban halal slaughter. You could sign that. I don't have the link, but if you just Google it, it'll pop up. I think they got 700,000 signatures right now. So it's actually not doing that well, but who knows, it might get a boost. And what that will do is it'll put it on the table for a parliament to debate it, which is about as good as you're going to get in the UK. As for other countries, couldn't tell you. I don't know where to begin, but I think just having the confidence to speak about this is step one, and we shouldn't be afraid. We're advocates, we get out there, we say what we need to say, and I don't think we should be afraid of saying what we've said here today. I think it's important, for sure. Okay, Lawrence, do you want to tell us? Oh, you got the petition as well. Nice. I'll put that in the chat, and then Lawrence, you want to kick off with the next?
Yes. Cool. All right. Why is mine not showing?
I don't know. There you
go.
There
we go. Okay, you guys can see it now. So this was a bit of an interesting one that popped up. So for people that this has, have not seen this, it has been around 5 years. Obviously, this is UK centric, but generally it was the same across many countries. It's been 5 years since we had the lockdowns in the UK. So for anyone that has been living under a rock, the lockdowns were basically government imposed shutdowns of many aspects of society. So the way we would have mostly experienced it would be, locked in our houses.
I'm just laughing at you explaining to people what a lockdown is after they all went through it 5 years. I think they've got it, man. I think they've got that bit down.
That's a valid point. So obviously, humans weren't the only ones who went through that. There were many animals that went through that as well. And obviously, there are many animals that is their day-to-day lives in farms, obviously. But one of the ways that we might not think about it is the lasting impact on companion animals, which, is probably very neglected. And it was actually very interesting to look into this. So in the UK, we kind of, pride ourselves on being animal lovers. We say we're a nation of animal lovers and things like this. And yet, this doesn't seem to be consistent with the data, even with the animals we purport to love the most, right? Which are dogs, cats, for example. Mm-hmm. So the RSPCA came out and basically said, since it's 5 years since lockdown, we have seen the amount of abandonment of companion animals go up significantly since the lockdown started. And There are a couple of reasons for that, which I will just touch on, and then I'll hand it over to you guys to share your opinions. So it was actually interesting because some of these things were actually noteworthy enough to get on the news at the time. But I think obviously we all know that nowadays people's memories are so short, we just get captured by whatever is currently happening and we forget what happened.
It's literally
exactly.
I think even less now, actually. I think it's gone down to like 3 or 4 days, I think, before everyone moves on. It's mental. So people might remember, well, definitely in the UK, you might remember that. I'm assuming this probably also happened in other countries as well. So there was a phase in the lockdown when people sort of impulse bought pets, companion animals, because when we were in the lockdown, that was, for a lot of people, maybe the first time when we were on our own, or we were stuck in one place with a very limited amount of people for a long time. Lonely, looking for.
They also adopted. It wasn't just buying, but yes.
Yeah. So it was a time when a lot of people went and got companion animals to basically heal or remedy their boredom or loneliness, right? And this obviously had implications for the companion animals. One, we're breeding them into existence for this, but also they weren't able to socialize as much as they normally would, right? Because the restrictions that were imposed on us also had implications for the animals. So we could not congregate in groups. And I don't know if people remember, there was also this scare during the lockdown. There was kind of like a demonization of taking your dog out because people were saying... Did you see
that stuff in China? Did you see what they were like throwing pets out of their...
Oh, I didn't see that. No, what was that?
Oh, no, I don't know if... Look, it could have been some conspiracy theory or whatever, but I swear I saw videos in China of some people throwing pets out of their windows because they weren't allowed to leave their apartments, and they heard that pets could transmit COVID. So they were throwing animals out of their windows. Now, I don't know if it was, I mean, AI is pretty good now, but I don't know about that, but I'm pretty sure I saw that. Someone fact check me. They go and check that if that happened or not. Yeah. But no, I remember the scare. I remember when they were saying that, oh, your dog could have COVID. And
exactly,
and
yeah. So there was a scare around dogs and shopping as well. Do you remember people would come back and wipe down or everything they just bought?
Mm-hmm.
I did that at first. I didn't know. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just figured I'll just better safe than sorry. Let's just clean everything.
Yeah. We all became well acquainted with alcohol wipes in about a week.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was this. Obviously, companion animals were generally impacted because we weren't allowed to go near other humans, and so we wouldn't be able to take our companion animals to socialize with other companion animal guardians. But also there was this scare around, if someone else breathes near your dog or touches your dog, they're going to have COVID and blah, blah, blah. Right. So that had this impact on companion animals when they wouldn't be able to get the normal socialization that they would need to develop properly, right? There was also a thing that many people may have seen in the pandemic of abductions of companion animals, especially of certain breeds. So in the UK, one thing that happened was because there was this boom in people getting companion animals to help with loneliness and boredom, if someone is going to get a companion animal,
just quickly, for the sake of making this like faster, just go pets, man. I think we all know what you mean when you say pets. I'm just giving you like a break because this must be getting difficult for you to say every time.
Yeah. So people were abducting certain pet breeds because the more sort of like, I don't know, posh ones or whatever, the ones that people, luxury sort of, I don't like those words, but you get what I mean. Right. So they were getting abducted. So there was this period in the pandemic when people were like, make sure your animal is always in the house, and blah, blah, and people were going over fences to get into their back gardens and stuff.
Oh my God.
This was also there was also a short phase of people wanting to raise backyard chickens. And now you're getting cases of chickens just being found abandoned and roaming around the countryside because people are giving up on this, venture of backyard chickens and putting them, anywhere. And the final thing I was going to cover was another thing that people, may not really consider, especially if they don't have a pet, is in the lockdown, we were told if it isn't urgent, just don't do it. Err on the side of not doing it. And so what happened was a lot of non-urgent medical needs that companion animals had didn't get addressed, right? Because they would only get taken to the vets if it was some sort of really urgent thing, like they were very sick or something like this. But if it was just like a mild irritation or they were just generally ill or something like this, people were told err on the side of not taking them to the vets. And so you also had a rise in people like prescribing for their animals. So just going online, getting medicine they thought, they just saw on a forum would help their companion animal and give that to their companion animal, which obviously, you should seek a professional if you want to help your companion animal.
Yeah.
So these were some of the ways that pets were, neglected in the lockdown, and it could have been ways that we didn't necessarily think of. And there's still this shadow lurking from that, right? Still now, 5 years on, because, still this lack of socialization would have impacted, we saw it in schools as well. Part of the reason that people are talking about kids being, socialized is because of the hangover from the pandemic. So we're seeing this same sort of stuff in companion animals as well. And I just thought that was very interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Jamie, did that happen also? Was that also something happening in your neck of the woods, like New York? Was there people going out and buying animals, and now are they abandoning them? Or is that just
absolutely. I mean, you're seeing, the shelters people were adopting animals, fostering a lot during that time. And you saw that the shelter numbers were lower, which was great. But then just within a matter of a few weeks, they were full again and actually overflowing. And at least in New York, I know that they kill for space now at many of these shelters. And then people attack the shelters, the kill shelters. Meanwhile, it's like, well, the root of the problem is that we are breeding these animals into existence to begin with. And what do you do when you have thousands and thousands of animals, millions actually, that don't have homes? So it has been a huge problem. And I think that people don't always think about how when you have a companion animal, it is a commitment for the rest of their lives. It is a lot of 15-year on average commitment, and it's expensive as well. So people are getting these animals and they're realizing, wait a second, this is a lot more work than I realized. It's way more expensive than I realized. And then when they go back to work, they feel that they don't have enough time to dedicate to that animal, which is often the case. And one other thing on that I'd like to say is that, okay, yes, it's not great to leave an animal home for 7 hours a day. However, animals that are in the shelter 24/7, locked up with no access to any sort of love, human touch, proper walks, that to me, I think is way worse than being home, alone for 7 hours, although it's not ideal. But there's a whole load of these issues.
With dogs especially, cats somewhat, but dogs especially, because cats can quite quickly become feral. I've noticed they can very quickly adapt to being like wild again, and they don't really need people. But dogs, some of them do definitely go feral. But when you bump into dogs, if you're in a country like Turkey or India, you'll find that a good 8 out of 10 dogs are not feral. Like they actually really want you to love them and hang out with them, and they really kind of evolved to thrive off of human contact. And when you think about it that way, that some of these dogs spend their entire lives 24 hours a day until eventually they die in one of these places, and they get some love, don't get me wrong, but they don't have it's not like a home. It's not like a fulfilling, rewarding community they have. They live in a block, a concrete block, like a little hole with the fence on it, basically. And they live with another dog, and I'm sure they build some kind of relationship there. But they need like a human guardian. They crave it. I mean, they thrive off of it. So it's really sad. I also read, Lawrence, in that article you were looking at, that the RSPCA was saying that they currently have a massive mismatch in terms of they're getting way more animals in now than they can get out, like rescued out. It's like it's a really, really bad ratio right now, and that's because of everything 5 years ago, that people are still abandoning their animals now, even after realizing they got what they needed, right? It's really sad. What a really sad way of being, to kind of just use an animal like that and then just discard them when you're done. Oh, I don't need the companionship anymore, and they're a lot of trouble. So
yeah, it's like animals are seen, and this is obvious to all of us. Animals are just seen as a lot more disposable than humans. You would never approach adoption, as in human adoption, adopting a kid, as I'm gonna adopt this kid. I'm kind of lonely, like. But if times get hard, obviously that's hard on me. But I can always just dump the kid somewhere. Like this is just not like a reasonable thought process we would ever tolerate towards a human. So why should we tolerate it towards an animal? Especially when you know that the place you're going to dump them into may result in them getting killed to make space for more animals to then go in, right? So,
and it's because people are going into getting these animals for selfish reasons a lot of the time. What can this animal do for me? Will this animal look cute with my outfit? I want this designer breed because it makes me look like I have more money, or whatever it is. And when you have those motives in mind, it then leads to the problems that we're seeing today, the animals being dumped at the shelter. I had a best friend since high school that I had to stop talking to, actually, because kind of right around when COVID was finished, she lost her senior dog just due to natural causes, and then ended up buying a dog from a shelter. And I work a lot with shelters and fostering, and I could have gotten her any breed she wanted, any age. Honestly, it just sometimes takes looking a little bit. And she bought the dog. And when I expressed to her, when you buy a dog from a breeder, it's a death sentence for another dog. And it's taking a home that could have gone to a dog that is already living and that needs one. She was not receptive to my commentary about it, and then bought another dog, bought 2 dogs. So it can really create, like, when you are looking at it from the animal's perspective and you're advocating for the animals, we as activists, it can create a lot of tension with those around us because we so desperately, want to find them a home and to treat them, with love and respect. And not that she's abusing the animals she has, but I look at her and I'm like, wow, you actually it's your fault now that 2 dogs were put down in a shelter.
Yeah, that's really, it's devastating when people really close to you respect, and you would imagine they would see sense, and then they don't. And I've had similar things with people in my life as well, where I've made a point, and yeah, I don't know. It's to say, well, I mean, look at Romesh Ranganathan, the comedian. Who he is? He's a really famous comedian, and to his credit, I mean, he has spoken out about veganism a lot. He speaks about animals a lot. I've jokingly thrown shade at him in the past, and I'm going to do it again now. It's a critique, but it's really, I think this is a side note, but I do want to move away from us kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater whenever somebody does something that's not good for animals, when they are doing literally so much more than practically everyone else on earth. You know what I mean? And in this case, I don't agree with what he did. He went and bought a dog, and he did it because he said that the shelter dogs, they're too unpredictable, and he has young children. And to me, the solution is don't get a dog. Right? Then if you can't have an unpredictable rescue dog, which is fair play, by the way, you're gonna have to be very careful with a rescue dog. They've got trauma. You shouldn't really, unless the rescuer's telling you they came from another home and they've spent lots of time with kids. You probably don't want to risk it with a street dog, for example, because you just don't know what they've been through, and maybe a kid triggers them, and yeah, it's dangerous, right? Solution is don't rescue a dog. Fine, or wait till the kids are older. Don't buy a dog. Come on,
what would be the difference in getting a puppy from a shelter versus a puppy from a breeder?
Absolutely, yeah. Get a puppy from a shelter if you can. But I think in his case, he couldn't find puppies.
He didn't look hard enough.
But for sure. Whatever he did is, and it's a real shame because, the guy is solid. He's absolutely solid. He's spoken about animals a lot, and he's done comedy where he's kind of jokingly called people out, for not being vegan and stuff like that. So, he's done some work. I think he's worked with animal charities and stuff. But yeah, it is disappointing. You can't hide it. It is disappointing. But at the same time, I think we've got to try to be reasonable about this and not absolutely go after someone. and undo everything they've ever done because they did one thing that's not good. I think we need to try and be I don't reasonable is not the word. What's the word I'm looking for? I think pragmatic is the word.
Yeah.
I think we gotta try that little bit, because I know as a community I get annoyed too very quickly when people do bad things, but yeah, gotta try and think of the big picture sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. Like, where do we want to put our time and energy? But I do think it is a huge issue, because then the more we perpetuate this buying and breeding of animals, then the cycle continues, as opposed to like biting it in the butt right then and there. And what's interesting too, David and Lawrence, is like you have non-vegans who are very against breeders and who are dog rescuers and who spend their entire lives fighting for dogs and cat, and companion animals, and they will rip somebody's head off for buying a dog from a breeder, yet they're eating animals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, makes absolutely no sense to me.
It's wild. Yeah, we have it flipped the other way around. There are some people out there who are completely opposed to all animal farming and all sports and all animal testing and everything, but then they will go and buy a dog, and they will argue with you all day about why that's. And so, if I was to take one of these two things and say, look, I'm not going to really get into it with one of these people, I would not get into it with the person who opposes farming and all these. I would say, you know what, you are the last on the line of things I need to talk about. Whereas the one who is like completely opposed to breeding but is for everything else, I feel like that's more of a low-hanging fruit. I would say that's more where, like, okay, there's a lot to do here. Let's try and expand their care about being against breeding, and let's get them against breeding pigs too. Let's get them against breeding cows and chickens. There's an expansion there, but yeah, we're kind of veering off a little bit now. We're getting into more of like what should we do strategic? Let's do a strategy debate. But yeah, no, it's really really interesting points. I think this is a good topic, Lawrence. Good one to bring up. Did you have anything you wanted to go through before we continue, or?
No, that was the end of that story.
All right. Well, I've got a very light story next, and it's not at all to be taken too seriously. But we will have a serious chat about it. But the story itself is not like a huge news, let's say. So I guess you guys have heard, you're aware of this. Oh, where are we? The actress Mikey Madison. Do you know about her?
I don't think I do, and I don't recognize her.
All right. So she just won an Oscar for a film called Honora, which she did a really good job in. Obviously, she got an Oscar, but what does my opinion matter? Yeah, of course, she did a good job. She got a bloody Oscar. But she's got millions of people are looking at her right now, like millions of fans. She's really hot right now, like a big deal right now in all the media and stuff. And she's been doing a lot of media stuff, doing media spotlight stuff, getting lots of interviews and things like that. And she's used the opportunity on more than one occasion in these interviews to talk about the fact that she's eaten vegan. Now, I mean, I think she said she is vegan as well, but I think it's really cool that at this point, while she is at the height of her fame, she's bringing it up. So we can play this quick little clip to show you like a couple of examples of where she's spoken.
No nuts in the vegan nuggets. Probably. That's probably what it is. A vegan nugget is probably a nut.
This is my favorite recipe. I actually just made it about a week ago for my best friend, Aurora. And I've refined it a little bit over the years because now I'm vegan and a little older, so I like dark chocolate instead of milk chocolate.
They say it's better for you.
Yeah.
So we've got dark chocolate.
Yes, dark chocolate.
It's a vegan recipe.
It is, yes. This is a vegan egg replacement.
Hopefully there's no nuts in the...
So yeah, there's a couple of... I saw another appearance as well where she mentioned it in a different video. So I think that's really cool. And whether she is, who knows what's going on in her life, and if it's some kind of, it's a health thing, or if she's doing it for animals, or if she cares about the planet, who knows? But I think the important takeaway here is that, as I said, at the height of her fame, so not coming down, not kind of in the middle, not coming up. No, she's at the top level right now. Just won an Oscar, probably one of the most in-demand actors in the world, and she's bringing it up, and she's talking about veganism. And I think that's potentially a very, very good influence on millions of people, because if someone like her starts talking and just putting it, normalizing the word and normalizing the food, people pay attention. And so putting it to you guys, the big question here, do you think celebrities like her, like Mikey Madison, move the needle at all? Or is it just lifestyle content that makes people go, huh? What do you think?
I think they absolutely do. I think that people, unfortunately, are very invested in pop culture. They idolize these celebrities, and it can move the needle either way. I mean, you have somebody like Joe Rogan that gets on his podcast and shares something like, oh, that a plant-based diet doesn't help the environment. That sets us back years. I think that sets us back years.
Yeah.
Whereas something like this, it's positive, it's light, she's a pretty girl, people might look up to her, idolize her, whatnot. It might make it seem relatable and that they can be plant-based as well. I haven't seen her discuss anything about animals and animal ethics, so like I'm very wary of like getting excited and putting weight on what they're saying, but I don't think it hurts for her to mention veganism and normalize it a little bit. And it also takes away from this like radical idea of what some people think militant vegans are. They look at her and they're like, oh, she's vegan. Okay, that's cool. Maybe I could do it too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
So my take on this is, if you want to know if it's influential or effective to have a celebrity say something or represent something, then follow the money, right? Like, what do all companies do if they can? Get celebrities to market their products, right? And they do that because they know people are swayed by what celebrities do. Celebrities represent things that we want to aspire to, or we find familiarity in them, or we're attracted to them, or all sorts of things. There are all sorts of reasons why we like different celebrities, right? And if they are putting a point across or marketing a certain product to us that we, and we like them, then we're going to be more predisposed to being sympathetic to that, right? So
yeah, totally. It's a brand. They're putting their brand to a concept or to an idea that makes the idea more attractive, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you're off the back, like I said, of a big Oscar win of a movie that seemed to, a lot of people seemed to love. And Oscars are no small thing. I mean, it's I know they've become a little bit of a joke in the last couple of years. Like, it seems like not a lot of people care anymore, but it's still very, very difficult to get one, and it is still a lifetime achievement for an actor. So, to have that and then to be coming off the back of that and talking about veganism is cool. And we mentioned that we don't know why she's doing it. Someone in the comments said they think that she's an ethical vegan, and it maybe is the case. I saw some other reports or things that she'd said. She rescued a dog. She adopted a rescue dog. And she's said that she wants to start a pony rescue one day as well. And she didn't say a pony farm or I want to buy ponies. She said a rescue. I want to have a pony rescue. So I think that's pretty good. They're good signs. It's good signs that she actually gives a crap about animals.
Yeah, I mean, look at somebody like Joaquin Phoenix, who used that opportunity when he was doing his acceptance for the Oscar that he got to advocate for the animals by talking about the dairy industry. And in his acceptance speech, he actually said a line about how people think that they're so superior to animals that they are okay condemning a baby cow to death to put coffee creamer in their coffee in the morning. And that line right there reached millions of people overnight. A video clip like what we post, on Instagram might reach a couple thousand, here and there. But right then and there, overnight, because he's a celebrity with a platform, he was able to reach millions. And so I think that we absolutely, as a movement, need to leverage the help from celebrities and mainstream media, because it's one thing for us to just continue in our little echo chamber, but it's another thing to reach the mainstream with this message. And that's where I think celebrities can be helpful.
That takes me on to another question, actually, for you guys. Definitely a little controversial, especially for you, Jamie, because it's going to be it's like a direct attack on you.
Oh, good.
Basically, and
hit me.
Right. So when we're looking at someone like Mikey Madison, who's done this, and it's sort of, she effortlessly just goes, yeah, it's vegan, and almost it's a nothing. It's like it's nothing, right? And a casual conversation. So the question is, how much does that matter? And do you think that we actually need more people in these types of positions, not doing what we do necessarily, but actually just like it is like breathing for them? It's like, oh yeah, it's just like drinking water. It's such a nothing that it's just so normal and part of day-to-day life that people are moved by it. Do you think we need more of that? Because I know this is the reason it's controversial is it's the polar opposite of what we do. right?
Yeah, it's the total opposite of us. Like, I can't imagine being nonchalant about it. But I think the short answer to that is yes, because I think that we need to use multiple different tactics and ways to reach many people. If you don't have, the polar ends of things where you have the more lighthearted people that are maybe talking about recipes, and then you have the militant people, you don't have even any middle ground. So I think that like somebody like her might be able to reach people that you and I cannot reach. So this brings us into a topic of like, when we go about and critique each other and critique activists for how they do things, I think maybe it can be nice to just say maybe we could be more effective in this way, but I think that it really is a waste of time in a lot of ways, especially the way that like we attack in our community each other for certain ways of doing things. So I really like sometimes the approach of just dropping, especially when she's on a mainstream interview like that, of just dropping like, this is a great vegan recipe. And sometimes we don't need to always have these big celebrities go into the really gory slaughter discussion. It might, I would personally, yes. But if I think that there's something to be said about being able to just maybe reach somebody that might be closed off to the way we advocate for things.
For sure. I'll tell you what, I'll go rogue. I'm going to go off road for a second, and we're going to let a comment just have one more point here for us to quickly discuss before we move on to the next story and the final story, I believe. This person in the comments brought a great topic up here. Love how you'll bash celebs the moment they stop being vegan for a few months, lol. And that brings up an interesting point, because this person is not wrong. When somebody does say that, or sometimes they don't even announce it. Sometimes it just kind of like falls out because they show a recipe they're eating and they don't really. And then what does the vegan world do? Yeah, they collectively we lose our minds, and a lot of people will go out and go after them. And so I guess let's quickly talk about that. Do you think that it's a good thing that we do that we go after these people, or do you think there is a better way that we could deal with this? I'll say that I have my opinion already, and I think people know it, but I'm curious for you guys to go first and see what you think.
So I would just say, like, we already do that, right? We already lose our minds. Has it been effective? I think that's the question we should just ask ourselves, right? Like,
well, has anyone gone after being told that they're a piece of shit and disgusting and animal abuser and hypocrite and liar? Has anyone gone, hey, do you know what? You're right. I'm back.
Yeah.
Has it ever, you know what I mean? Or has anyone ever read that, do you think, and gone, these vegans got a point. I'm going to join now. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they have, but yeah.
Well, the thing is, you'll always be able to find examples that have, but it's a very small minority. That's just not how humans work, right? So, yeah, I think people just need to reflect on that. Like, we always have to have in mind, what is the actual goal I'm pursuing by taking this action, and is this action actually furthering me to that goal? And if your goal is to get this person back into being vegan, or even if it's just trying to convince them, don't swing the opposite way, or just if you're not vegan anymore and I can't convince you, at least don't promote non-veganism or something like that. If that's your goal, is the screaming and shouting, is that going to get you further to that, right? That's the thing we need to ask ourselves.
I think what's so frustrating about celebrities announcing when they're no longer vegan is that it makes it seem like a diet as opposed to like an ethical stance. So the confusion becomes, how could you go against and turn your backs on the animals that are suffering in these slaughterhouses? Like, you're making this seem to the public like it's a just wish-washy thing where it's like choosing what type of dessert you want, if you know what I mean. Like, to us, it is like an identity. It is an ethical stance against abusing animals. So in another vein, it's like you wouldn't have a human rights advocate turn their backs on the humans that they're fighting for, and it's the same with the animals. So that's why I think that it's like it becomes this almost angry state towards those celebrities. But in what you're saying, I from what I understand is it's like, okay, if we're really trying to get them back on our side, just bashing them and being a jerk about it help. I think in some ways, maybe like not calling people names and whatnot, but in some ways it could get them to reflect on things, as opposed to encouraging them and saying like, you know, you do what's best for you and your body. You know, that is so frustrating. I don't know if you guys remember a few months back when Lizzo announced that she's no longer vegan. People were commenting.
That was the biggest shock of my life, honestly.
I know.
Who would have ever imagined that would happen? You know?
I know. How about Russell Brand?
Yeah, again, just complete. I'm being sarcastic. These are both people that I 100% expected to go the other way.
David, these are people. Really? Because these are people that said things that were for animal rights, especially Russell Brand.
Yeah, I mean, I will say something controversial. Lizzo clearly always had a problem with food. That's evident, okay?
Okay.
Russell Brand has always been a loose cannon his entire career. You cannot predict him. So as much as I really liked when he was pro-vegan and vegan, I always had a feeling that, I mean, the guy is wild and crazy still, even though he's not on drugs anymore, he's still mental. And it was always a little bit, you know. With Lizzo, I never even, I've got to be honest with you, I never even looked into Lizzo because I just immediately saw that there's probably some kind of eating problem here. And I just don't buy it. I think it's probably going to go the other way. I never said anything actually about Lizzo.
It goes to show that she's just was plant-based and just doing it for whatever diet. But the point is that maybe we shouldn't give these celebrities so much weight or get our hopes up at the very least. I mean, the other thing too is like, you see activists, people that have done AV cubes, people that have gone to vigils, turning their backs on the animals. So
that's frustrating.
I don't get it. I don't understand how that's even possible. But here we are.
I think it's, well, I mean, again, we are way off on a tangent here, but I'm okay to do it for a little while longer. But my theory is that I think it's probably a multiple things. It's the outside world is a lot more convincing and powerful than the vegan world. Unfortunately, there's more money there. There's more money in advertising. There's more social pressure. It's a great, big, huge operation that is desperate to get you spending money on those products, whereas we don't have a lot of money and we don't have a lot of influence. So you're already fighting against. It's more surprising if somebody stays vegan their entire life than if they go back. Like statistically, I would expect that a lot of people would buckle to the pressures because it's so much pressure. That's what I would, if I was a statistician, put it all on paper, you'd be like, oh yeah, a lot of people aren't going to stick with this because of just how the world is right now. And that's really bad. And but I don't think we make it easy either. I don't think we make it easy. I think actually we as a community, and this is deep, but I think we're quite hostile
towards
in
each
general and to each other especially. And so you've got all this external stuff, which is dragging people and trying to get them to ignore the facts and trying to get them to look at this open field where these cows are. That's their lives. Trying to trick you constantly, tell you you're going to be sick, tell you your family and friends tell you you're going to be sick because they've read some nonsense or heard Joe Rogan say it. So you've got all that. And then they come to the vegans, they're like, hey, vegans, help me. And the vegans are like, you're not a real vegan, you're not vegan enough. So then they're like, well, hold up a minute, right? I mean, so I think it's partly, and so I understand, like, some people come in the comments and troll and they say, you vegans are really aggressive and all this kind of stuff. And, on some level, I kind of see where they're coming from in some ways, because I see the kind of impact that this has on our own people, and it's a real shame. So I think that's where you get someone from like an activist who goes and then now becomes an animal eater. It's probably a combination of all of it. It's a combination of them being, maybe they've been pushed out or they've been attacked by someone, and then they hear something about health, and then they hear something else about this, and then they go down a different rabbit hole, and all of a sudden they have an identity crisis. And then what happens when they have that identity crisis? What do? We don't say, hey, no, it's okay, come back, we'll talk about it. We say, fuck you were never vegan, you motherfucker. And we abuse them. So then they go, oh, so I was right. And they always right. Okay, great, I'm going to go now. It's a real shame, honestly. I think I've written about this for those that are super interested in it. Go to my Substack. I've got a few articles that are talking about this kind of thing. Yeah, it's a real shame.
Should we go on to the next story?
Yeah, sure. Nice segue, Lawrence. Get us out of this.
We could go on and on. I
know. But that was a really good chat, JB. You got a lot of interesting perspectives. We should do some kind of inter-vegan version of this where we just talk about all this stuff and get deep into that sometime. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, I'll take. Yeah, go for it, Lawrence. You want to put your screen up?
Yeah. Right, nice one. So this is a not so nice story. So this is basically a case of a guy who was found to be abusing dogs. So he is up in the north of England, and his neighbors would refer to his house as the House of Horrors, and they would hear like all sorts of, like disgusting things, right? So they would hear dogs shrieking from inside the house. They would see him taking dogs that looked perfectly healthy inside the house, and then sometime later he would be pulling them back out, and they would be what looks like dead, and they probably were dead, right?
Where was he getting these dogs from?
I don't know where he was getting the dogs from. I'm not sure. I know that he was the owner of 4 dogs, but there were other dogs that he abused and killed, and I don't know where he got those from. Okay. It wasn't confirmed from what I could see. Okay. So yeah, so this guy is obviously, everyone knows the word that I need to use. Evil. So yeah, eventually he was taken in by the police. He was arrested. But the main thing I wanted to focus on was the punishment he got, or supposed punishment, right? Because I think this is actually the key part of the story here. So this guy, just to make it clear, when the police went inside, the reports say that there was blood everywhere, like all over the house, right? He was found to have killed 4 dogs, right? So that he was found guilty of that. I believe he pleaded guilty. And I don't exactly know how the legal system works, but I think as a result of him being willing to plead guilty, they didn't pursue him on the abuse of the other dogs, right? Because there were other dogs he abused, but the guilty verdict was just for the 4 dogs that he actually killed, right? And when he was taken away by the police, all of his neighbors were like jeering at him and cheering that he was being taken away. So this guy, you have to be some piece of work for all of your neighbors in tandem to cheer when you leave, right? But the punishment he got was insane. So just keep in mind that this guy was responsible for the death of 4 I don't know why, but it feels like I'm lessening it by saying he was responsible for the 4 deaths, but he killed 4 individuals. Yeah, maybe a more direct way of saying it. And even though he wasn't convicted for this, he was obviously abusing other dogs as well, right? Right. And he got 2 years community service. Now, I don't know if that goes by different names in other countries, but basically what it means is you just have to do like jobs to benefit the community. You don't go to prison, right?
It's like you have a job, basically.
Yeah. You do like painting of community stuff or whatever, and this sort of stuff, cleaning, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he got 2 years of community service. He has to wear an electronic tag for 5 months, and he can't keep animals for 5 years. Now, the most insane bit of that to me was that he couldn't keep animals for 5 years. Just imagine if you had done the same to humans and they said, you can still adopt kids, but just not until 5 years' time, right? Like that's how insane this is, right? Like this guy is clearly not a responsible caretaker of dogs, to put it lightly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So he was returned to his house a day later. Right. So he was arrested one day. Next day, he was already back at his house having a Chinese takeaway. Right. And the locals obviously weren't happy with this. So there were kids that were smashing his windows in. Right. And saying and just generally locals were making it known that he wasn't welcome back. So eventually the police actually had to come back and escort him out of his house. So he had to move. Right. And that was kind of where I wanted to leave the story and open it up for discussion. So yeah, there are kind of 2 things here, 2 bits to discuss. The first is, how much do we undervalue animals that we think that is an appropriate punishment, right? And the second bit is, how far do you think it is to go for it to be appropriate for people to take this kind of stuff into their own hands, like these people did, like smashing his windows and stuff like that. Like, we all think this guy is despicable, obviously, especially us. But like, how far should we take that in our actions? If the law is only dishing out so much as a punishment, right? And clearly more is deserved, like, should we take any of that into our own hands? Is vigilantism appropriate here? So yeah, let me open it up. What do you guys think?
I just want to say something real quick before we get deep into it. But this brings us actually back full circle to the first story we discussed. For me, it does, because look, you've got we don't not only do we not enforce our bare minimum animal welfare laws in the UK, right? Not only are they not being enforced, but actually something we've defined legally as cruelty is legalized for the sake of the whims of a certain group or two, right? And then now stories like this show you that actually this is very much in line with that, because not only are we not enforcing our bare minimum welfare laws for animals in the food system, we're not punishing those who abuse animals that are supposedly companions and family members. They're not food animals, right? And this is by using terms that they use. Obviously, I don't think any of them are food animals, but in terms of how they're categorized in our world, that's what they are. And these are pet animals. They're supposed to be as family members to people. They're supposed to be adopted, and they have more rights and more legal rights than a pig does, or a cow or a chicken. And what's this guy? Kills 4 of them, abuses them, blood everywhere, and that's what he gets, right? So it's kind of a joke, is what I'm saying. Is that the whole system in the UK and it's other countries too, it's all a big joke when it comes to animals. And I think the root cause of it is the lack of enforcement, whether it be with halal and kosher slaughter, and that they should not be legal. That is one joke. The other joke is that if you have laws in place to protect dogs, then when somebody does horrible things to dogs, they need to be severely punished. Not, we're not talking going and getting a job for the government, which is basically what community service is. You just don't get paid. That's nothing. It needs to serve jail time. It needs to go to rehab, at least, taken off the streets.
Yes, needs to serious psychological analysis. Right. I mean, that is just to have evidence of blood in the house, to see weapons with blood on them, for neighbors to hear screams. They saw dead animals being pulled out of there. It's like, how much more evidence do you need to just send this guy off and away forever? It is extremely, extremely scary, because if these things are happening to our companion animals, which most humans, as you said, care about, then you can only imagine the things that are allowed to happen to animals that are thrown into the slaughterhouses.
Exactly. And in terms of what you were asking, the next thing you wanted to ask, how far, when does mob rule take over, basically, is what you were saying, right? That's a tricky question for me, because instinctively, I would say, yeah, let's go and do something about this, right? And I would be right there with you. But that I would only really do that when somebody is continuing to, if I know there's an animal in there that this person's doing something to, then anything goes in my book. Kick the door down, smash everything, get in there, get the animal out. If it's kind of like an after the fact punishment, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it leads us down weird things where, like, okay, I don't know if I think what's law and order. If you've got, even though we disagree with it, you've got to operate in a certain way. For example, so if the government decides he only gets that, it's not really for you to go and decide, no, we're going to go and enact our own justice. It's like, if he reoffends, it's a whole different story. Like, you need to go and save an animal. I don't know. It's a difficult one.
I get it, because it's like, it may seem so obvious to us in that, he's gotten off lightly. Clearly, we should go and do something, right? Because this is what is just. But we all have different interpretations of what is just, right? And if we say it's okay for us to go out of, and do something to someone else because it accords with what we think is just, then what's stopping someone else go out and do something that they see as just, which we would completely disagree with, right?
Well, it's like, if Jamie, you go out and do lots of stuff in the street in New York, and there's a lot of wackos in New York. I experienced it myself. Great fun, by the way. But what if a big group of people with some funny opinions about you decides that you have been doing is harassing people, and actually the government won't do anything, so we're going to go find where you live and smash your place up. You know, if we accept it in one case, we'd be hypocritical to not accept it in another case, even though in our view they're wrong and we're right. You know what I mean? So it's kind of it starts to get a little bit hairy.
Objective. Well, I think that the problem then becomes is it's like, okay, where is that line? But I think where most of us would agree is that if there's killing involved, if there is, blood and you're hearing animal screams and that kind of evidence, I mean, I think that we can agree that 100%. Is like super 100%. Not okay. But then the other thing that comes to mind too with this story is like all the time I see stories on like people will post on Facebook or even in person I've seen where you have like sometimes a mentally ill person that has a dog, whether it's like I've actually seen some woman that barely had like any clothes on that was clearly like not fully there, yanking this dog down the street, like pulling the dog, and the dog is like, clearly in distress. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of laws in place to protect that animal in the moment. Like I called the police and the police is like, well, we can't do anything. And unless that woman surrenders the animal, that is her property. So then it ties back to this idea that animals are property.
Yeah.
And so if this guy who's like doing these things to the animal, technically there's laws in place that say that people can decide when they want to put their dogs down. Even if the dog is perfectly healthy, they could euthanize them. So it's that's what do we do?
It's an uphill struggle. We got a lot of work. We got a lot of work to do still, of course. We need to. I think step one, I suppose, would even though that people have the right to euthanize. It's not euthanize. If they're healthy, it's not euthanizing them. But yeah, whatever, to euthanize a dog or a healthy dog or a healthy cat, they still have more rights than a chicken, pig, or a cow. And so it's kind of tricky. I guess but it would be an absolute dream if pigs, chickens, and cows had the same rights as a dog or cat had, though, right? I mean, even though it wouldn't be perfect and it'd still be a lot of issues. I mean, goddamn, imagine that world.
They'd have that human empathy on their side, and that right there would be a huge, like, it goes back to this idea of like, why do you care so much about dogs and cats but not about cows, chickens, pigs, fish, and turkeys? It makes no sense. Like, where is that distinction just based on the way that they look? Like right here in the comments, you have people that are saying, like, yes, I have empathy, but I still don't have a good argument for abolishing the consumption of animals. It's like, well, do you have a good argument for why we shouldn't hurt dogs and cats? Because if you believe we shouldn't hurt dogs and cats, you surely should be able to understand why we shouldn't hurt farmed animals.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people falter back to this, well, it's what they were bred for thing. And that's that one I always find to be quite an interesting one, because it is nothing more than a category that you have put on them. It doesn't change who they are, or if you compare pigs and dogs, that's a really good comparison actually, because pigs are actually very similar to dogs and actually quite very, very intelligent, actually more so than dogs. And a pig doesn't come into the world and be like, oh, what am I born for? Oh, okay, it's for pork. All right, well, oh well, better luck next time. No, they don't. And even if they did understand it's what they were born for, it doesn't make it all right to then do all these horrible things to them and kill them. So what they were bred for, that's kind of more what you'd say about a table. Or what did you make that table for? That's important because it's fit for purpose. But when it comes to a creature like an animal with a brain and a personality, your idea of what they're here for is not as important as their life. And they're actually here now, and they're living, and they care about things, and they feel pain and suffer. It's your categorization of them is not important when it comes to what matters for a dog or a pig, right?
And it's kind of self-defeating, because it's like the thing that we're fighting against is them being in that category. And so to justify them being in that category by saying they're in that category, it doesn't make sense. You're appealing to the very thing that is in question, right? So
right, yeah. It's
well, let's say that you do see these animals as in the same category. Okay, it's this idea that humans are superior to these animals in some way. And the people that are saying this are also not acknowledging the fact that humans are animals. So, you know, when we look at like what makes us, you know, more superior in their mindset, it's this is an argument that we could, you know, go on and on and on about, but it's just like why would we want to cause suffering when we don't have to, when there are other options? And we know that these animals, why are we looking at the ways we're different? Maybe it's just because we don't have fur. Maybe it's because we are able to talk in different ways than they communicate with each other. Why don't we look at the ways in which we're similar? And the ways in which we're similar are really the only things that matter, because it's their ability to feel pain, just like we do. So why are we still trying to justify these horrible things that we do to them, instead of just recognizing, look, we don't have to at this point in 2025. We don't have to hurt them. Absolutely.
Yeah. And especially not for enjoyment. A lot of people feel uncomfortable. I'll make this one last point, Lawrence, before we jump to the next story. But I feel a lot of people get uncomfortable when I point this out, that it is all the things that we're talking about in terms of what you do to a pig or a cow or a chicken, and all the horrors they go through in the farm system and then slaughter, and you know, absolutely despicable. And those that don't know what this looks like, just go to the website 3 minutes. I'll write it out. 3minutes.wtf. I'll write this out. Go watch this, and you'll get like it's literally 3 minutes long, this video, and it'll give you the full picture of what's going on. And when you realize all these horrible things that we're doing to animals are not for survival, it might be understandable if we literally had to for survival. It still wouldn't be right by the animal's perspective, but at least you kind of get it, right? You hear about somebody in the middle of some place where they literally have no way of surviving but to kill animals, and you say, I mean, it must be, I feel that must be horrible, and I feel so bad for the animals, but I get you. I understand why you're doing that. But in terms of everybody in this live stream right now, and literally hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, it is for enjoyment. It is no different than a bullfighter kills bulls for fun, or a trophy hunter kills an elephant or a giraffe for fun. It's killing for enjoyment, whether it's like, oh, I get a kick out of killing, or I really like the taste of that burger. It is all enjoyment. And people feel uncomfortable with that, but it is the reality of it.
Should we go to the next one? We've got a nice, more squishy story
to take us home. Yeah, bring us home, Lawrence, with the gushy, squishy story.
Right. Ooh. So this is, it's a nicer story, right? So this is just a little look into how much can humans how much can other animals understand human languages? So I wanted to quickly start by giving you an example. Do either of you know this example, or does anyone watching know this example of Clever Hands, the horse?
I actually don't know.
So this is a super interesting story. So this horse, who was called Clever Hands, I don't know if that was a nickname, or assume it was. So this horse became famous because everyone thought that the horse could do basic like arithmetic, right? Basic maths. And the guy who looked after this horse, or owned this horse, was taking the horse around, taking Clever Hands round, and doing these public demonstrations of this horse being able to do some maths. And it actually came out that the horse wasn't doing maths. What the horse had learned is to pick up on the very slight subconscious body language and facial features of the guardian. And so because what the guardian would do would be like point at the different answers, right? And when he was pointing at the correct answer, his body language and his facial features would change in such a way that the horse would pick up on and be able to get the correct answer, right? And this, people were tricked. Obviously, it wasn't, the horse wasn't intentionally tricking people. The horse was just doing what they understood. But people were misperceiving that as the horse being able to do basic maths. So this is just an example of a relatively famous example of animals being able to understand humans in some way, right? The horse is able to read the body language of the guardian. Another more recent and even more famous example that you guys probably both will know is Coco the gorilla. Do you guys know Coco?
Yes.
Okay, so Coco the gorilla was a famous gorilla that basically learned a lot of sign language, right, and could communicate with us, using sign language. And I believe there's a famous clip of Rowan Williams meeting Coco the gorilla. Have you seen that, David?
What about Mr. Bean?
No, that's Rowan Atkinson. No, Rowan Williams. No, sorry, Robin Williams. Oh my God, am I getting the name wrong? The guy who's in Good Will Hunting.
Look, I just need to know if Mr. Bean met a gorilla or not.
No, Mr. Bean didn't meet. Well, Mr. Bean might have met a gorilla, but I'm not aware of him meeting this gorilla.
See, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But it was not Robin Williams. I remember. I know the video.
Yeah. I was getting people mixed up. But anyway, so Coco the gorilla is a more famous example. So Coco could knew how to use 1,000 signs, right? Hand gestures and maybe parts of the other parts of the body as well.
Not like go vegan, in the street.
No.
No, okay.
And also Coco could respond to 2,000 words as well in English.
Wow.
which is pretty impressive, right? Because there are some humans that couldn't do that. So and then I don't have this other example up as to show a photo, but there's also an even more recent example of Kanzi the bonobo, who used a lexogram, which is basically a board with loads of pictures on, and you can point to the pictures and they mean stuff. So if you want water, there's a picture of water, you point at it. And some animals, and I believe Kanzi was one of these animals, have got the ability to point to multiple combined symbols to mean something. So there was a case of a bonobo that I can't remember the details, but there was a certain fruit that I think it was like sauerkraut, or so not a fruit, but it was some sort of like, fermented cabbage or whatever. And the bonobo ate this cabbage and didn't like it. And so pointed to two symbols, which I'm going to get the exact words wrong, but it was basically, they called it like shit cabbage or shit or something like that. But it was basically putting together the fact that it's food and it's bad. Right. So obviously this is very basic to us, but they are rudimentary examples of other animals being able to communicate to us on our terms, right? Because we can kind of somewhat interpret, an animal's body language or if they want something, but this is the opposite way for an animal to understand our means of communicating and then communicate with us on a basic level.
Right.
So
we don't try to understand their language. I mean, I was just in India for 2 months, and that's a better job that I was doing than communicating with people in Hindi. I'm like pointing to things. I mean, at least the bonobo was able to I'm trying to do charades out here.
Did you learn how to speak with cows though? There's like a few movements you can make with cows. The main one is obviously the head, the cows,
that I picked up on.
They get that. Have you noticed that cows do that, by the way? Did you actually see that they do it?
I saw the people doing that.
I know. I've got a theory. I mentioned this to someone over there in India. I said, like, where does the head nod come from? He said, I don't know. So do you think it maybe came from cows? Because you guys, like, for a long time, cows are like a god for most of people in India, and cows do that a lot. They actually, I don't know if you've seen them do it, they sometimes shake it harder, but sometimes they're just kind of, I wonder if it was an influence, maybe.
So back to the story. So I was gonna get onto dogs, and then I was gonna show a video which is quite nice. So dogs are a bit of a special case, right? Because we've had a bit of co-evolution with them, and they've been in an environment where they have been able to understand us and the way we communicate a lot more than other animals. And I'm sure anyone that's spent significant time with dogs can recognize this, right? So, but just to give some examples that I learned from doing the research for this. So dogs can tell if speech is scrambled. So if you have a human voice that you play and then a human voice that you edit so that it's slightly scrambled and distorted, like say that someone's speaking to you on a walkie-talkie and, you know, there's bad reception. If you play those two voices to a dog, you know, it's not going to be every dog, but dogs are able to tell the difference between a clear human voice and a human voice that is kind of distorted, because they've evolved this ear for human voices. Another one really famous example of a dog called Chaser, which is really cool, actually. So Chaser was able to learn quite a bit of English, and Chaser, this dog, was able to learn specifically the difference between bring the ball to the sock and bring the sock to the ball, which is super interesting, right? So the dog is able to identify what the sock is, what the ball is, what bring is, and which one you're supposed to do it to, right? Which is super interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So the video I wanted to show, which you guys might have come across this account. So I actually came across this account because my girlfriend follows, and she sent it to me. And do you guys know Merlin the pig?
No.
Yeah.
So Merlin the pig. So this woman here is the guardian of Merlin, and they release videos where he does all sorts of interesting stuff. But the thing he's famous for is he's learned to press buttons that give out a certain, you know, water please or something like this, and he's learned to sort of communicate in that way. So this is an example of that. Can you guys hear the volume?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna have to reshare. Let me just quickly reshare.
Yeah. It's all good. Just sort it out.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead on chat while he's sorting that out. How's everybody doing? I've seen you guys have been very active. I saw a couple of trolls in there too. You're doing all right though. I saw you handling them very well.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen from time to time.
I think that your comment that you pinned about the AI possibly helping us communicate with animals could be very interesting. I think it could go one of two ways. I think on one end, wow, that would be amazing for the animals to advocate for themselves on another level of something we can understand. But on the other hand, what if they don't relay the message in a way that's like understandable for us, or that what if it makes them sound like not harsh enough? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on, oh God, yeah. It's just a whole world. I mean, what is that even going to look like? To translate the brain function into human language. I mean, whatever we do, it's going to be lacking in one way or another. I guess it's like, yeah, there are risks to it, you know, in terms of like what, you know, the biggest risk I think to it, the biggest risk of AI in animal communication is that the farming industries, animal agriculture, will use it to improve welfare, which basically they'll be able to just make the animals more productive, make them, you know, because it's true that happier animals tend to produce more of animal products. And in terms of when they kill them, it is true that an animal that's not suffered is going to be better at that stage. So the reason they would be doing this wouldn't be for like to make the animals happy, it would be for more profit. And also they'll use that also to tell the public, not only does it taste better and is it better quality, but also, hey, look at this new system we've got to show you how happy they are. Don't feel bad about it.
Well, I heard that they can monitor their heart rates now, and that would make it easier for them to stuff more animals into those spaces, because now they're able to keep more of them alive, as opposed to like a lot of farmers lose the animals because they die of disease or, you know, because of the conditions before they even reach the slaughterhouse.
Yeah. No, it's a risk. The AI risks are huge for the animal world.
Yeah.
Cool. What are you showing us?
Yeah, I've got the video ready, so hopefully you'll be able to hear this one.
We learned the color green.
Can you hit nice?
Yeah.
So I'll show you guys right now. Oh, he needs water. Are you out of water?
Did he say I need water?
He just pressed his button asking for.
Yeah, so I think like they've like played around with it, so they've put voices in where it makes him sound sassy.
That's hilarious.
For water. You are out of water. Good boy.
That's funny.
Green. Green. Go to green. Go to green. Go to green. Where's green? Where's green?
Wow.
Good boy. Go to green. Good boy. Press the button.
I want a kiss, bitch.
You want a kiss? Give me a kiss. Thank you.
Wow.
Boink. Good boy. Come here.
Cool. So yeah, there's a whole, obviously Merlin the pig is a whole account, so there's loads of videos you can go and see, but yeah, it's super, you know, like super interesting how, and they're doing this with dogs as well. There's a lot of research going on at the moment with teaching dogs the ability to communicate with human language by pressing buttons. So yeah, this is like an active field of research.
I saw this this thing from some years ago actually about dogs where they attached some it's technically animal testing, but I think it's not invasive, so it's not. You can make your own mind up whether you think this is all right or not. But they put eye trackers on the dogs. They made them sit in a specific place and watch a screen, right? I think the eye tracker was in front of them or like built in somewhere else. It wasn't like on their heads or anything like that. And I believe it was actually people's pets. Like they voluntarily brought them in, like, oh, let's do this thing. So and they tracked their eyes to see how they reacted to different pictures. So they showed them pictures of just, I don't know, landscapes, dog faces, cat faces, I think, and human faces. And in pretty much every image, the eye movement was just random, all over the place. They just, oh, looking everywhere, right? But when it came to a human face, they did what we do, which is what we do is, I believe it's, we go up, left, across, and then down, right? And we do that because we're trying to identify the emotions in someone, and we need to see if they're a threat or if they're a friend, right? So you go eyes first, like the face first, and then you go to the body to see like what's going on there. Dogs do the same thing. And so the theory is that they've evolved to do what we do and identify our emotions to see if we're a threat or not. And so they go up, left, right. And they only do it to human faces, not to any other animal faces, only human faces, because they know that we express danger usually in our eyes in this area, right? So that's what they look for. It's crazy.
Yeah,
mind-blowing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I've heard that sheep are attracted to smiling faces, and chickens can
Like, oh,
and that chickens can recognize up to 100 different faces.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Which is really cool and interesting. And that also, like, you know, we look at other animals and we say, oh, all the sheep look the same, you know, because we just categorize them as one animal. But they're able to really see like distinct differences between each other.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a good. I mean, when people do this to people too, you know. Have you noticed? I mean, have you heard like? Yeah, I mean, we do it.
We all know the joke.
I think we have that joke, but the thing is, I think what people don't know is it's also the other way. I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That, you know, it's weird in our Western white world where a lot of people will be like, oh, I can't tell the difference between that person, but then those people say, oh, I can't tell the difference between that white guy and that white guy. Yeah. You know, and I saw this, I've seen this funny meme actually about this. This is off topic again, but where it had a load of different white actors and they're all famous, but you put them all side by side and they're like, tell me again how someone else looks all the same. And it's true because like you know, in Hollywood, there is like a certain type of like leading man for action and whatnot. And they do tend to be pretty much the same features over and over again, especially if you look throughout the years. Obviously, the sizes change and muscle definition, all that stuff changes, but it's still that kind of action hero face. It's pretty much the same, you know, it's quite funny.
I think we also use these stories of animal intelligence because people will use the claim that they are not intelligent as reasons why we should exploit them, right? Yeah. But you know, being vegan and being somebody that advocates for animals, like what I've realized is that no matter how intelligent they are and no matter how they treat us, that shouldn't give them a reason to that shouldn't be the reason why we don't hurt them, right? So like
That's
even
the
if they
opposite,
right,
actually.
even if they
Should be
like
the
when
opposite.
you totally like when you look at babies, I mean, we could say, well, because they can't talk yet and because they can't walk, they're not smart and they're not intelligent. That doesn't give me the right to hurt them, right? So I think it's great and all that, like, we're able to show, look how fast this pig can learn, in most cases even faster than dogs. But at the same time, it shouldn't be the one reason why, like, we should just not hurt them because they're sentient and that because they can feel pain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the absolute basics. The only when intelligence comes up and things like that, it's generally, it's not very well thought out. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, this feels right. It's my instinct tells me it's because they're dumb. That's why we do this, and that's why it's okay. But like you just said, your babies are very dumb. I mean, I'm not an anti-baby guy like Lawrence, but they are pretty stupid, and that's fine. It's because they're a baby, and they will get smarter. But actually, some of them won't. Actually, some of them will have a problem. It means they won't get smarter. And if that did happen, we wouldn't be like, oh well, toss them in the fire. They're gonna be this, dumb. And even with pigs, they're estimated that pigs' intelligence is like a 4-year-old child. So I think most of us would agree that 4-year-old intelligence is pretty, impressive. And you just saw what pigs can do. And it wouldn't matter even if they only had the intelligence of a baby. If anything, that makes them more vulnerable and more innocent and more of a candidate for you to defend them, not to, like, if you see someone, a human who is really, really like not with it at all, you don't go, oh, well, what can I get from them because they don't know what I'm doing? How can I mess with them or get money from them or hurt them? Because I can get away with it, right? They can't even speak properly. So I can do whatever I want. Like, no, we call those people evil and we say they need to be thrown away somewhere out of society, right? But yet then when it comes to a chicken, it's like, oh, they're so stupid. Let's do what we want to them. You become that person. in a click, you would call that one evil, but you just became that guy. It's a real shame. It needs to change.
Yeah.
But no, mate, that's a good story to conclude on that. The animals are far more complex and incredible than we ever could have imagined. And I think as technology improves more and more, and we have new ways of understanding them, and hopefully it's all used in a good way, I think we're gonna. I saw some quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it was just that basically, the more we learn about them, the more horror that is going to come with that. Like the more, like for example, with pigs, like the more we learn about pigs and how complex they are and emotional they are, the more horrific it is what we do to them. You almost wish that the science was saying they're just completely not with it. You wish that's what you're hearing. Because at least it's like, okay, at least they don't really know what's going on. Pigs know what's going on. They have a pretty good understanding of the things around them and the fear. They feel the fear and the,
I was just at a sanctuary the other day, and the owner was saying that the cows, as soon as they hear a mango drop from the tree, like yards away, they all go running over there. And it's like their senses are so much more heightened in ways that ours aren't. Like, even, when we look at dogs, like their ability to smell and experience the world just in different ways than we are, it's almost like you start to think, wow, like maybe they're experiencing these horrific things we do to them worse than we would if we were in those situations. And so, just to kind of wrap up on this, it's like we don't really know for sure, like what their experience, how severe it is. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And so the best thing to do would be to not perpetuate it and to try to end it. And one more thing on this is just like when we look at any group throughout history, we had to devalue their lives. We had to say that they are different from us and they are subhuman in order to do the things that we did to them. And that is exactly what is happening with other animals.
No, I totally agree. thank you for coming on, Jamie. It's been great to have you here. You brought some great perspectives to the table. People can find you at you've got your podcast, which is Jamie's Corner, and then you've got your own personal socials too. You use both, don't you? Which is just
it's Jamie's Corner. Yeah, it's Jamie's Corner, and it's Jamie Logan. My Jamie Logan is like my personal page. I post like a lot of food on there as well, but it's Jamie's Corner is like only animal rights activism. So.
Perfect. Well, great. Thank you again for coming on. And thanks again, Lawrence, our philosopher co-host. As always, if people want to get into some deep philosophy around antinatalism, and if you don't know what that is, Lawrence's channel is the place to go. Lawrence Anton, just go find him over there if you want to get into that. And
Pleasure as
always.
You've
got some stuff about animals as well. You got some stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's relevant. Again, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody who came along. Oh no, hold up. Sorry, 1 second. We have a comment from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Sorry, I almost completely forgot about you. Who said, thank you to 3 extraordinary people. Thank you so much, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
Legend. And thanks to everybody who got involved. Stick around. Keep chatting if you want. Keep arguing with each other. I've seen that. But be nice to each other. And of course, if you're not already a vegan, I mean, come on. We've given you enough reasons to start making the changes. Thanks again, guys. Catch you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.